Welcome to the Prof Talk Pod, brought to you by the Engaged Professor. Every 2 weeks, join us as we talk about tips and tricks to help you connect with your students, engage with industry, and stay up to date on all the teaching trends. We'll give you actionable strategies that will help improve your teaching today. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Prof Talk Pod. I feel like I've got to change the intro slide because, again, I've got Katie here. Katie joined us for the last 3 episodes and agreed to join me for, I don't know, at least 3 more. Could be more than that. So, welcome back, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. It was fun last time. It's going to be fun now.
Yeah, I'm super excited, especially because we get to talk about happy things
Yes.
today. Before we hopped on, I was just telling Katie, I feel like often on the podcast, we're talking only about challenges. And since this episode is going to drop during the week of Christmas, I thought it might be a good opportunity for us to just share some things that actually went well, that were fun, that we liked, that stood out to us this semester or this last year, or even maybe the last couple years, kind of wherever the discussion takes us. So I'm actually going to let Katie start if she's got something that she wants to
Sure.
share that is just kind of something happy and good.
Yeah. So I personally really liked my students this semester. I feel like that's something that we don't lift up enough in this industry. And some semesters we have, and I've had them classes where it's like, oh my gosh, I cannot get through this. You all are a wild bunch. I really liked my students. I'm sad to see them go. And I'm lucky in my role because I get to see them sometimes 2 or 3. I think the max is like 4 times if they go on to grad school. And so I'm really excited because I think about like I counted this. I think about 30% of the students who were in my federal tax class between 2 sections this year, I'm going to see again next semester in a different class. So like that's my number one thing. I really liked them and I'm going to miss them.
Yeah, I feel the same. I keep telling everybody I mean, I love teaching sport management and sport marketing, but I'm having more fun teaching in this new program than I have had in my entire career. And I think a lot of it is I have just the best students. Like I was not anticipating kind of the range and I've just got super creative, a little bit more, I don't know, not go with the flow so much as like willing to explore and consider different paths and think about life in different ways. And so same for me this semester has and last semester really has been just this kind of unique group of students, different from students that I've had in the past and very diverse because I'm not teaching necessarily in a discipline like sport. So I've got students who want to make jewelry and sell it on an online shop. And I've got students who want to develop a golf app. Like it's just such a wide range. And I agree that's been like super fun. And I don't think I do a great job of reflecting on just the people that I get to interact with on a daily basis because it's so
Yeah.
easy, especially I'm working on final grades. I don't know if you are
Oh yeah.
too. Yeah.
Same.
So
I'm also.
this is like when the questions come in and the emails come in that you're like, "No, we can't earn 30 more points right now," or,
Yeah.
there is no other opportunities. So it's really hard to sometimes think about the good and the positive interactions with students this
Yes,
time of
like when
year.
they're upsetting you right now, or when you're like, "Ah, I liked you until you sent that email." Yeah, so it's funny you say that about the diversity of your students because I created I think I alluded to this on the last time we were together, but I created a class from scratch about 2 years ago, and it's one of those classes. It's called Sustainability Reporting and Analysis, lives in the accounting sphere. I'm an international practitioner, so I know a little bit about it, but I've been doing a lot of learn this as I go sort of stuff. And what's happened is I'm getting quite the array of students in that class. It's an accounting major elective. And I'm getting a lot of overlap with my required federal tax class in that class, and just very different reasons for being in my class. Some of them are like, "Oh, I heard it was an easy elective," and I'm like, "That's okay. Let's chill together." And some of them are like, "I'm super interested in this topic." I'm like, "That's great. Let's talk about it." And sort of embracing those differences, and like they don't all have to be the most motivated, like excited people ever, right? They just don't have to be.
Yeah, I
Hey,
think that too. Like, it's great when they are, but also it's okay if they're not, and sometimes you get to see some really cool growth in those students who like, "Yeah, I took it because I heard it was easy," and
Yes,
then at the end, they're like, "No, wow, that was actually
yes.
useful," and that makes you feel good too.
It does. I've had a couple students actually this semester who came out to me and were like, "I never thought about this as a career opportunity in any capacity, but now I think I might be having a conversation with you about looking for jobs in this realm." And I'm like, "Okay,
That's
that's
cool.
awesome," especially because you didn't mean to do it that way, right? Yeah,
When
I like them. I'm gonna miss them.
I'm gonna guess that that's, in that industry, like, not something a lot of people think, "I'm going into this." They kind of learn about it, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, this is kinda interesting."
Yes, totally. Isn't that great? Even if you know, like, very little about it. I've also, kind of on that note, um, started helping my students make connections. I am really involved with a lot of our big four accounting firms in the recruiting space. Just I'm a faculty member who sees a lot of different students. They invite me to things. And I feel like this semester I've really started going to the conferences or the symposiums that they put on for faculty, a couple in particular. And I'm really able to take that back, I think, for the first time in a long time, meaningfully to the classroom and say, here's what Ernst and Young is telling me. Here's what PwC is telling me. Here's I met this person and making those connections. And that's adding a lot of value to my job right now, too, just as a credible faculty member who and I get this on my course evaluations a lot, who's willing to talk about stuff beyond the classroom. And my students were very excited about that this semester, which I appreciated a lot.
Yeah, I love that, and it motivates you to keep doing it.
Yes,
That's
absolutely. And to tell the firms that, hey, this worked. You know what you're doing. I know you're doing this. Like you're paying for all this cool stuff because you want me to talk about you. And I am. And my students are receptive to that. So it's going great.
I love that, and also practical. I think anytime you can connect it to that, like, that just gets more buy-in from students, and like you said, helps build
Yes.
credibility for you too.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, that I feel like we could do an entire episode on just, like, ways to connect with students with outside
Oh, yeah.
connections and then, yeah, help build that. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit in the past, but not in enough detail to maybe help people see what it actually looks like in practice. So, I've
Yeah.
got my little list of things I write down during
Especially
during
in
the
large
pod.
classes where they don't get that sort of interaction all the time from their faculty when the program's large.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's so one of the things that I've loved over this year, even though I had a large class, it's 70 students. I know many people are teaching 3, 4, 500 students. So this is bigger than what I was used to before, but by no means huge. But the last 2 semesters, I've had students really engage with like reflecting on how they did on major projects. And so even though I had 70 students in that class, I still had them like record a video saying, here's what I feel like I earned on that final project. Here's what I learned and what I got out of doing it. And it is a lot of like those are 10-minute videos for 70 students, so don't do the math because it's
I was gonna
depressing.
ask, that seems like a lot of grading.
It is a lot of grading. Um, but as I think about like what's going really well, it's honestly been one of the most, I don't know, rewarding things for me to hear them talk about what they did, why they did it, how they learned it, what it meant to them and to really think about it. And obviously, not all of them are, these huge life-changing moments in those videos. Some of it is just like, yeah, this was a pretty cool project. I think I should get an A because, I added these citations. But some of them really are like, I had no idea I could think about influence and how people are impacting me. And now I'm thinking more intentionally about who I'm engaging with and who I'm following and what I'm reading, and that is a lot of work, but it's actually going really, really well and something that I think I'll probably expand to most classes I teach, which is scary if they keep getting bigger,
Yeah.
but seems to be worth it.
Yes. It's funny that you say that because I had a similar, project similar assignment type, I think different purposes. Yours was more of a reflection, and mine was I have a final project that they do as a team. I take final assessments. It's not a final exam. I wouldn't really call it a project either. A very 360 view of how the culmination of our class. And so it's a creative project or assessment. They I won't get into a ton of detail, but they start from scratch. take all the fundamentals we've learned and create like the utopia, the ideal of what we learn in the class. And then so like a tax system, business tax system, for example. Then they have a partner team. And this semester, my win was that I did this asynchronously instead of having them meet in class with their partner team. I actually created like a pretty elaborate discussion board. And I thought it was going to be a cop out, like, oh, they're not meeting in class during the week before finals. But it went way better because they actually had to participate. Like their work was visible to other people and there was accountability there. And then the 360 part of this is then they respond to their partner team as an individual. So it's a team initial submission discussion. The response is an individual submission. Normally it's a memo, like here's what you did well, here's what you can improve on. Here, well, like I'm acting as kind of the president of the other nation. Um, like I accept or reject, I accept with modifications your proposal. And for the first time this semester, I was really sick of reading ChatGPT's interpretation of other projects. So I had them create a video and they were sincere about it. Like they're earnest about these videos. Now they're taking a million years to grade. I have 100 of them, 105 of them, something. But and it's only 5 minutes. I had them do a quick one because I figured they didn't have a whole lot to say. But they're actually like, I feel like there's accountability when you have to go eyes to the camera, even if it's an asynchronous thing, even if it's not live. And I've learned that I know we'll have a lot of these conversations as we move on in our discussions. A lot of merit right now to having them talk through things rather than plug something in and move on with their lives because the learning happens when they're talking it through.
I've been doing that too, a lot more of the video piece because partly because there's the tendency to sometimes outsource even reflections to ChatGPT, but also because at the very least, if they have to say it, there's some processing happening, right? Even if they get help writing the thing they're gonna say, having to say it requires processing at some level, and I have found the video stuff is super useful, and I think it's not surprising things that we think are valuable take longer to grade. I think that's always the trade-off. Even when we think about, like, what should your final assessments look like, most of the stuff that I think is really impactful is hours of grading if you really, like, sit down and engage with what the student's work is, whereas if I give a final test, I can have Canvas grade half of that. Um,
Yes.
and I think that's generally true. So I'm glad to hear the video thing is working for you, although I will be feeling similar pain for the rest of the week in just
Lucky
finding the time.
Lucky for me, I make it very low stakes and really, unless something goes super sideways or they don't put any effort into it or they don't do it. I try to give them full points for it, but it's small points. It's like 8 to 10 points for a 5-minute video. I mean, really low stakes compared to everything else, just a way to wrap everything up. And what's funny about this is in my other class, I did the same memo that I always do. And so many of my, like, I think I have 15 students right now who overlap. I have twice.
Oh.
And they were like, "We'd much rather do the memo than the video. Like, if you had to give us choice, like, we'd much rather write." I'm like, "That's because Chat will write for you." And they're like, "Well," and I go, "No, no, no, like we have closed circuit. We have closed circuit AI, Gen AI in this school. So you could just plug in the memo to chat and or the project into chat and ask it to do it for you." And they're like, "Well, that's not it." And I go, "Yeah, it is." Like, so there's some redemption for you, Becky,
Yeah.
that they they're doing it grudgingly, but they understand why they're doing it.
Well, and I think you hit on something else that I love about these kind of video additions to assessments, and that, you know, the there is value in being able to articulate in word and speaking what you think, why you think it. That is what you do in the work world. Most of the time, if I need to work on a project or do something big with a colleague, I am talking to them, whether it's on the phone or in a meeting or walking to their office. Like, we do some stuff via email, but oftentimes the most impactful discussions about, I sat and I had a research meeting with a colleague just the other day, and she asked me, how I would approach a problem. Well, asking that in email is not going to be as effective as communicating it verbally and having a discussion, and being able to explain to her how I would approach it and why I would approach it that way and why I think that makes sense is valuable. And I don't want students to lose that. So I think if we can build that in, I think there's a lot of value in that just in what they do on a daily basis or even in, like, having conversations around the holiday, around topics that
Yeah,
are
yeah.
challenging or interesting, like, there's value in learning how to do that.
I I don't know how much you do teamwork in your classes, but I for the first time, I did a lot of different things this semester, just kind of a little bit more push for accountability, individual accountability, and so one of the things I haven't done in a really long time that I brought back because my students were asking for it was peer evaluations. So it's like a 0 point, tell me how things went with each of your teammates. And when one thing I noticed, there were a couple of outliers. I had really good teams this semester, actually. I liked my students. I told you they liked each other. Things went well. A couple of teams didn't do as great. One of the complaints their teammates had when they complained about a teammate was he just threw everything into AI. She just threw everything into chat and didn't really put in meaningful work. And what's fascinating about that is I throw a lot of stuff into chat. I don't know how much you use AI, but I use a lot because it makes it. I teach so many different classes. I have so much going on. It helps me meal plan and pack for my upcoming trip and do all kinds of things. But my students are starting to see the quality of the product when their classmates and teammates, when their peers don't use it effectively. So a lot of times it was, I use chat too, but like I feel like I'm better at it. I feel like I use it like in a smarter way than that person did. That self-reflection was fascinating to me because I was like, oh, you're like calling each other out for he relied way too much on that. Sometimes his answers were wrong. It's like, yep, don't it doesn't mean not don't do it. I just got a lot of like interesting insights like that this semester that I haven't really gotten that self-reflection from my students in a long time.
Well, and I love that it's built around AI because that there's, the argument just like you hear all the time, like students grew up with technology and they'll know how to use it, but that reality is most of us, first of all, don't know how to use generative AI effectively. Like I spend a lot of time in it, but I'm by no means 100% awesome at everything that I do with it. But I think about it a lot and I reflect on it a lot. And I feel like we need to intentionally build that for our students. And as I look into 2026, like that's something as I think about the reflection on this final project, I want to continue to almost do the same thing, but have them intentionally use AI and then reflect on what does it do well? What did you think it was lacking? What did you want to add to it? What did it get wrong? Like requiring them to do exactly what you just said, because that's, I think, super valuable, and I actually love that they're doing it with their peers because it's easier, I think, to do it with somebody else's work than it is to try to critically evaluate your own because it's yours, I guess, and I always feel like when I ask students to self-evaluate, they're worried that if they're honest with what they think that they'll do poorly because they're being honest. So I kinda love that they were doing it with their peers.
Yeah, and so another thing that I think you mentioned this like with they think they know AI. So we both have small children at home. I have a second grader and a fifth grader, and the difference between I think millennials and Gen Z. I just had this conversation with somebody are more similar. And I'm millennial. I think you are too, right, Becky?
Mhm.
We are more similar to each other, millennials and Gen Z, than we are to Gen A. So like Gen Z is more similar to millennials, and they would hate to hear me say that than they are to the our kids' generation, Gen Alpha. My oldest is 10, and she's right on the edge of that. And the reason for that is we got social media as we were like in the peak of our, brain development. They're getting chat in the peak of their brain development. My oldest daughter has ChatGPT on her iPad and her phone, and we've reminisced about this. I won't say like lamented, reminisced that we've had a lot of snow where I am and e-learning days. She had to do a lot of homework on her own, and she has not once picked up generative AI, even though she knows that she has access to it. She's doing everything by hand, and it's because it's just there. It's like electricity. It's just there. She doesn't think about using it. Whereas for Gen Z and millennials, these kind of things are still very much a novelty. And so we're using them in this like, this is so cool. Like this is doing so much for me way rather than just integrating it into, whatever else we're doing. And I think that our students are starting to see kind of some of the outcomes of that or the consequences maybe of that. But I think it's fascinating. When I tell them my 10-year-old has ChatGPT on her iPad, they're like, why would you let her do that? Because she uses it to ask for a good pancake recipe or occasionally is like, tell me about bears or, super innocuous things. It's just there. And it's such a novelty to our college students right now, especially those of them who got chat during college, like in 2022 when it came out, and they were freshmen or sophomores.
Yeah, because it was completely transformative for them, whereas when it's what you've always had, it just is. That's such a good point. I'll be interested to see 10 years from now. I don't know what we'll be doing. Maybe podcasting. Who knows? If we could go for 10 years, that would be amazing. And so, like, our kids will be, you know, high school or
Yeah,
college age and be really thinking about how these things have been integrated, or maybe college will look nothing like it looks now, probably. Who knows?
yeah, but
And
it is
speak
fascinating thought, isn't it?
It is a fascinating thought, especially going into another year, like, we're thinking about change and newness and, what things will look like moving forward. Well,
Definitely.
I love that. I love the video reflections. I feel like that's a good takeaway for people. Is there anything else that you're like, "Wow, this I just, like, loved that about this last year?"
I've been trying to think about this. I have started to do a lot more with, like, interactive scenarios. So, one thing I use AI relatively extensively when I'm creating content for my classes, and the reason I do that is and this is a whole different conversation, but, my class content changes so fast, like, not just semester by semester, but during the semester, that I gotta get real creative when I'm teaching core content. So a lot of times there isn't an example of a tax return with the new tax updates that happened in July. We have never seen a tax return with those rules on them, right? So I got to create like these scenarios, and chat's been really helpful, not with the understanding of the rules, but just like creating scenarios around that. And so I've started creating fictional companies in my class that they kind of follow the student through the semester when they're evaluating. I think sometimes, to be honest with you, they are a little apprehensive of that. So like, you're not showing me a real example. But the issue is in my disciplines, my two disciplines, my primary ones, tax, which federal and international, and sustainability reporting, there are not examples right now. They don't exist. And so I have to do it. There's no textbook to show me a current example of that. And so I feel like, and I'm refining that. It's one of the things that we talk about what we'll do going forward, and I think that's on our list here today too. That's something I'm going to continue to refine, but I've really enjoyed the create the company profile, create the scenario, and have them work from that rather than just like some random broad one-off hypothetical. We use those scenarios or those company profiles over and over in the class.
I love that. So since we're talking about it, you said continue to refine in 2026. So that's a thing on your list that you've really liked that you wanna keep working through?
Yeah, the one thing and I'm thinking about this from my actually both from my tax class and my sustainability reporting classes and the major assessments they do. I don't give exams, but the major individual assessments are 3 throughout the semester, not including that final assessment I just talked about. They've been dealing with random companies, so they get assigned like one from a list. And what's happening in my sustainability class, because they're all real companies, is there's a wide range of information available, of goodness of the company, and I feel like it's getting a little inequitable if my students randomly get assigned to somebody who's doing something really really well, and then another student's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, or oh, they have no information. And so in that class, I'm leveling the playing field by creating with the help of my graduate assistant who's amazing, a fictional company in an industry that we're not talking about day to day in class in the fast fashion industry, and it's like a 20-page profile of this company, and that's what they're using for their assessments. And so they're evaluating a real company, but it's all the same baseline. And then in my tax class, this is going to be a lot more work. I'm going to create a couple. They're a chef couple. One is like works for a major television network. The other one is self-employed, like has a lot of side gigs, consulting. They have a couple kids, and we're going to follow them through 3 assessments with different issues. Like they're doing something they're not supposed to do. Then we have to do their individual tax return, and then we have to reconcile their business return to their books. So they're going to get to know this couple like really well throughout the semester. That storytelling element is something I think, if you know the rules, your own background, if you know your discipline well enough to help chat go, I don't think you did that correct. Could you like water that down a little bit? That was too much fluffy description of that couple. I didn't need to know her hair color, right? But that institutional knowledge, like one thing that has been so useful is playing around with generative AI, and I have a Chat GPT plus subscription. So I'm using 5.2 thinking right now. Um, to help streamline a lot of that storytelling that you would otherwise have to spend like hours creating by yourself. The students love it so far.
And and what I would say is what we would do is just not do it, right? You would still
Yeah,
create the
no,
thing,
that's
but
a
you would
great point.
leave out the storytelling. So
100%.
right,
We
because
would
you
just
wouldn't
do these choppy one-off things, right?
correct, because you wouldn't have
Yeah.
time, right? Like, that's where like, I'm creating one of the things that I did this year, I'm trying to give students more choice and autonomy, and we'll probably talk about this in a future episode, in their learning. So, previously, if I was doing case studies, I would write 1. That's the case study everybody would do. But I'm trying to think of ways, and chat is helping me do this, like, I can write one and then have it model something in a similar industry, but different enough to appeal to different interests, right? Before, I wouldn't have done that because I'm barely having time to write a case study, let alone 4. And I think that anytime you're using it sorry, to do something that you couldn't have done before as a teacher that's making you better and improving learning, that's a great use.
Yes, totally.
Sorry, team, I am fighting what is the funnest cold in the
I'm
whole
trying
world.
to um, so 2026 is around the corner. We're getting close. And you mentioned what we were chatting before we got started, like what are some things that went so well? You know, what are we doing? What are we looking forward to in 2026? I love that thought because I feel like I'm constantly preparing for the next thing. Like I'm supposed to be grading finals right now, but I'm like, you know, doing everything.
Yeah, well, and you know what happens to me is, like, now is when I have the ideas of how I wanna make the thing better because it just ended. But I'm so
Yes.
stuck in grading and
Yes.
getting them in that I don't even allow my brain to think about the next step, and then by the time I'm done grading, especially fall to spring, right? It's
Hmm.
next week is Christmas. The week between Christmas and New Year's, I like to call it the dead week because it's
Yep.
nearly impossible
There's
to get
nothing.
anything to happen, and then it's 2 weeks and the semester starts, and you've
Yes.
already started meetings and whatever else that you're trying to catch up on before the semester starts. So, I'm trying to practice, and it sounds silly to think about this now, but, like, I'm looking forward to spending some time, probably tomorrow, really sitting down and writing out, like, here are some things I want to accomplish in each class in 2026. Now, for me, I'll be teaching the same classes in the spring that I taught in the fall. That makes it that a little bit easier. For some of you, you might not be teaching again until next fall, but do that now because it's not going to happen if you don't do it before you sign off. It's just not.
Yeah. Right. And so challenges for me, it's getting a little better are that I often switch preps between fall and spring. And I had this challenge actually weirdly when I went up for promotion because when we think about like course evaluations or set scores, we think about continual improvement. And one of the challenges I have there is that if I'm not teaching that class again for another year, I could show improvement. I could show, you know, amazing brainstorming and enlightenment. But also in my discipline, the rules have already changed. So I'm doing this enlightened thing and also almost with new content. So spring is always notoriously incredibly challenging for me. And so I feel like because of that very quick turnaround, and I'm taking a 6-day international work trip in that week right after New Year, right before school starts. Great timing. And we have a Rose Bowl to think about, like all this stuff, going on. I feel very motivated in the fall to make sure I have my wits about me heading into the spring and just try to plug and play. So I'm teaching two course numbers, four classes across two sections of each right now. I will retain that, drop my one section of federal tax, so one section of federal tax, two of sustainability reporting, and then I add two classes to that. Classes I only teach in the spring. One is a international tax graduate elective for MBAs, and the other one is a law class. I teach for the law school here. I'm adjunct assistant professor over there. And that's where my brain just kind of, goes a little sideways. I very, very badly need to stay intact with my current stuff so that I can move on. And by the way, that July 5th bill I was telling you about changed. I'm not exaggerating when I say it changed literally my entire class for international tax. So thoughts and prayers
Lots,
for
yeah, lots to do for you looking into
everything. Yeah,
2026.
7 weeks of stuff. So what I do actually, Becky, is I have a just a random Word doc on my OneDrive called ongoing course notes, and I plug everything in there. I go by class, and every time something goes wrong, or I liked that, but I would switch this up, or whoa, that was weird. I just make a note of it as I go through the semester. I open that document almost every day. And so then when I'm revising, moving on, whatever, maybe even simple things like the assessment is due at 11:59, leave it open until 6 a.m. because I'm not going to grade it between midnight and 6 a.m. And I don't want a million emails telling me that they submitted it 3 minutes late. It goes on my ongoing course notes. So it's all there. And I just update as I go along because I have a
I
lot to
love
think
that.
about.
I love that.
The
Just park
student
it.
hated this, or that question did not belong in that quiz. It belonged in the other one.
Yeah, because you won't remember it. Like, you just won't. So I love okay, so here's the I feel like this is a good stopping point and, like, a great final takeaway from this episode because new next year's New Year, so as you think about something you could do, first of all, make sure you spend some time thinking about what went really well and, like, give yourself a pat on the back about that because we are always thinking about what we need to fix, and we sometimes forget to think about what is great and give ourselves a chance to just enjoy that. And then also do exactly what Katie just suggested, which is start whether it's on your phone or on your computer, a Google Doc, a voice note, it doesn't matter what it is. Like find a place to store those random thoughts about what you want to do differently, what went well, what could be tweaked so that you actually can go back and do that when it's time to teach that class again.
Yes, and I'll add to that super quickly. Keep all of that in one place. I started off with a bunch of different documents, like one for each class. When you switch preps, when you no longer teach that class anymore, keep it in one space that you're going to be able to click on over and over again. That's been the most helpful thing for me.
When if you're in Word or Google Docs, headings, like actually using
Yes.
I wish somebody had taught me in high school the value of using headings in documents because then you
Yes.
have a table of contents and you can click and get to
And
stuff
you can
very
expand
fast.
or collapse so it
Yes.
doesn't look. Yes, I totally agree. That's like a low key skill. I wish I had have known too.
Yeah, it would have been and now I try to do it now, but, like, I'm not trained, I'm not it's not in my it's not second nature, so I'm working on becoming making it become second nature. It's also good for accessibility, by the way, so,
Yes, it
uh,
is.
as a happy aside there, so, okay, well, great, thanks for joining me again. Katie, please, if you found this valuable, like it, comment, share, give us a review, it helps us get found, and if you know somebody this might be useful too, please send it to them as well, and we will see you next time.